Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Kite Man. Hell yeah, Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. It was not the episode at all I expected, but obviously it kind of ties into some of the stuff I was bringing up last episode. I figured there'd be like some shenanigan type situation of them picking out a new place. I thought that would be like the entire episode. You know, last episode, that was kind of my thought process of what this episode might be. But it turns out, well, I'd also wondered, I was like, is there going to be like a house that they can live on top of? Like, is Noonan's like a house and a bar? Turns out it is. So they're living in Noonan's place. And we have Golden Glider being super cagey about her past and stuff, like specifically not wanting to talk about her parents and always shifting the conversation. She's like, yeah, who's your favorite Jack Ryan? He's like, babe, I know what you're doing. You want me to say Harrison Ford, but it's Affleck all the way. Which is so interesting because for me, my Jack Ryan is John Krasinski. Yes, it's recency bias because I also don't remember like the Harrison Ford or Ben Affleck movies, or even I'm aware the Chris Pine ones, like the Shadow Rippers, because I'm pretty sure those are Jack Ryan movies, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that's it. Like it's a recency bias, but it's also because like that's the only like Jack Ryan adaptation. I mean, I'm not familiar with Jack Ryan. I'm going to a whole Jack Ryan tangent, which is very befitting considering the context of everything. But yeah, it's so interesting seeing like how unhinged she can be sometimes, of like how she dodges stuff. Like, oh, we had the whole like relationship list and goals and stuff last episode, and now we've got this. I also love that there's a whole lawsuit against Noonan's for the whole episode 2 thing of Malice's cat going on a rampage. And I love the guy be like, oh, this place is too litigious, and he's like, the other driver dude's like, didn't your stepson die? He was like, yeah, I've just kind of moved on. But I love that the opening to this episode was kind of fitting in with the whole them moving in thing. And I love that it's like, right, it's like, I knew it, I was like, it's going to be something stupid that you're robbing. I mean, arguably, it's not that stupid because you're like, oh, okay, not as stupid as I thought it was going to be. Them stealing furniture. It's not that bad, but it's still like all this destruction you cause just for some furniture. I also appreciate Bane doing the assist here. I love that it's like, Kite Man's like, oh, yeah, we're going to take your big load. And he's like, and Glider, she's like, yeah, it's not your best one, babe. He's like, yeah, I felt it as soon as it came out of my mouth or something like that, which I'm like, oh, the innuendo keeps going. I also love that this episode also gave us an opportunity to like get to see Golden Glider and Captain Cold's relationship. Like, obviously, we didn't really... Obviously, we spent a little time with Captain Cold in this continuity, but obviously we didn't have that dynamic, and being able to kind of get that dynamic in this series is kind of interesting. Like, I feel like Captain Cold's more unhinged than he was in Harley Quinn, but maybe that's my imagination. Like, the whole him and... does make you wonder what's the whole him and Nora thing, Stan. Like, is that hookup situation done or what? Because we see him living in an ice cream truck, which I love that his sister's like, oh, your Kitty Diddler ice cream truck. It's like, yeah, it does kind of give off that energy. But yeah, we end up finding out that their parents frequented Noonan's a lot. And it turns out the reason why Golden Glider's so reluctant to talk about her family situation is because she murdered her mom and dad when she was a kid. She lost control of her powers. It's like, Jesus, that's so sad, because we know last episode that was her biggest reason for not wanting to move in with Kite Man. She was scared to lose control of her powers and accidentally murder him. But now she's become more comfortable where he's like, hey, I'd rather be murdered by you than live with anyone else. And she's like, I would rather murder you than let you live with anyone else, you know? So there's some sweetness to the derangement of it, but still. So I think that's kind of a nice like story arc for this season, of probably her eventually like no longer being afraid of her powers, of losing control of them, but also that kind of informs a lot of her decisions on why she was scared to move in with Kite Man. She's always been afraid of her powers, and now it's a situation of, now we know the core crux of that trauma is, I accidentally murdered my parents. So, but once again, that in itself is kind of one thing. Was not expecting the episode to also be a time travel episode. And who other than Bane being the one that time travels? And I love that he's like, oh, like this vintage newspaper, I could sell it on eBay. Oh my God, the casual sexual harassment, I must be in the 80s. But I also love Bane's like nature of like, he's the bad guy, but he can also be so good-natured where he's like, oh my god, these kids at the pool, there's no lifeguard. And he, as we learned at Villigan's last episode, like, oh my god, there's no one, these people here aren't treating the customers right. Let me, like, immediately try and get a job and be a good server to them. It's like, you know, I mean, that's Bane's personality through and through, so. One of my favorite lines, it's so stupid and on the nose, but I love it for whatever reason, is when he's talking to Mo and Joe, and I think it's Joe that's dead, or is it Mo? Whichever one that's dead, being like, oh my god. They were like, oh, that guy sucked. They're like, yeah, I'd rather get shot in the head than be friends with him. I was like, shut up, guys. I also appreciate and feel so bad for Bane because, like, everyone's kind of got that reaction to Bane. Like, that's the thing. Kite Man's the butt of the joke, which is so interesting. You would assume, like, Bane would be at the bottom, but the fact is Kite Man is. I legitimately think Kite Man's even lower than Condiment King, which, you know, whatever the case may be. But the thing I think is so messed up is, like, Bane being like, yeah, anything from my best friend. Kite Man's like, okay. I don't know if that's necessarily an indictment against Bane, but I think it's more so an indictment of, like, we don't really know each other, homie. We don't hang out like that. But it could also just be an indictment against Bane. Like, ooh, would I really be besties with... because I'd assume, like, Kite Man's totally like the, oh my god, my girlfriend's my best friend person. And there's nothing wrong with that. Your significant other being, like, one of your best friends or your best friend is never a bad thing. I just feel like he might not have an actual best friend other than his girlfriend, so... I could definitely see him being that type of person, because I know some people might not, like, ever look at their significant other. In their head, it's like there's a difference between, like, a best friend and a significant other's, like, you know, I just feel like he's one of those type of people. Like I said, no indictment. I think that's kind of a good quality to have, to view your significant other as your best friend. Even if it's just one of your best friends, could be like your bestest best friend, my BFF, you know, type of thing. But either way, I also love that it has, I wonder... Pissing in it sends you to the future. So is it specifically pooping that sends you to the past? They never clarify that, to be fair, because I thought, like, oh, just flushing the toilet in general, but it has to be like the toilet has to be charged. So because Bane pooped in it, he went to the past. Because he pissed it, well, they piss in it later, he's able to go there to return to the future. So I also love that we see, like, a young Oswald Cobblepot. There's even he doesn't have any dialogue, but if you look in the background at one point, there's Scarecrow in the back, which I think is interesting. It's like very old school design of Scarecrow, where he has, like, the straw hair and stuff. I was like, oh my god. I like including them just because it's like, right, they're super dead present day, so I thought that was kind of neat. I also love that person. I don't know if, once again, you're like, is that a real character? Probably is. I don't know. Laugh track. And I love Noonan being like, whoa, what did I say to you? No laughing in my bar, or some shit like that. And just kind of, and he kind of bounces. I also love my favorite, one of my favorite bits in the episode is the Insect Queen. Like, she tried to make a Terminator thing, and he was like, and Bane didn't get it. She's like, oh, she's like, I'm more of a predator gal, a sexual predator. He's like, I don't think that means what you think it means, which I love that. And it's like, oh my god, that fly you killed was my significant other. Ooh, look, oh my god, the lemons dropped onto my tits or whatever. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. But Bane's too busy being in love. And I didn't think much of it. I was like, is she going to be someone significant? Hell yeah, she is, because she's Golden Glider and Captain Code's mom. I was like, that's interesting, and that's going to be fascinating that he's fallen in love with her. I was like, what does that mean? The whole aspect of, like, you don't want to change the future, like, there could be consequences, yada, yada, yada. So I thought that was so fascinating. Like I said, at the same time this is all going down, Kite Man is trying to, you know, understand why, after finding out, like, the truth about everything, and I'm trying to talk to her and find out, like, wait, why would we spend $10 million buying the bar where you killed, where your parents died? That's cause she's like, oh, I thought it'd be kind of healing. It's like, I don't think that's as healing as you think it is. It is kind of a fucked situation. And the fact that you didn't feel the need to mention that, like, you've been super copacetic about it. I get it, like, your denial, or at least, like, burying that deep. Never would have guessed you had this association with Noonans of, like, oh yeah, this is a place where, like, hey, right over there, I walked past the spot where I murdered my parents and a whole bunch of people. So it's kind of like that's dark. That's so fucked. And like she's given no inkling that that was a thing. Once again, showcasing that character's super unhinged to some extent in a great way, but also in a scary way. But you know, Kite Man would get a fear boner from that, I'm sure, because of like how awesome she is, but also how scary she is. So. But yeah, so Kite Man decided to go back in time to stop her from killing her parents. That's his way of healing her trauma. It's like, rather than the simplest thing of, hey, let's go to therapy and unpack that, why don't I use this toilet to go back in time and stop you from killing your parents? Which I think is so fascinating because they saw the message from Bane earlier in the episode and they ignored it because they were so focused on her trauma and stuff. I mean, she was avoiding it like crazy, but like they didn't care enough. And then Kite Man didn't remember. He was like, whoa, wait. And then he tore off the rest of the message. He's like, oh my God, it is from Bane. It was clearly from Bane because even Golden Glider was like, oh, that sounds like something Bane would say. And you could clearly see like the beginnings of like the B and A of Bane, but they never bothered finishing the message because they were so wrapped up in the relationship thing. So... And I love Captain Cold comes over because he's like, oh yeah, like he invited me. Kite Man said I can live here because he's like, oh, he's ecstatic. It's like, Kite Man doesn't know what ecstatic means. And like Captain Cold is so deranged that he's like, oh my God, your boyfriend went back in time to stop you from trying to kill our parents, but you're going to ultimately end up killing him. Ha ha ha. I'm like, what the fuck is this relationship? I was like, that's so unhinged that he's like joking about that. It's like, I guess everyone handles it. She handles it by like burying it so deep. He kind of cracks the most darkest jokes about like, hi, you not only killed our parents, you're also going to kill your significant other. Even though he seems like, oh, nah, I'm pretty tight with Kite Man. It's like, yo, you're good, buddy. But also like, nah, like it's funny thinking about your boyfriend trying to heal your childhood trauma and you inadvertently killing him in the process. It's like, that's also super dark. I also love that Bane's intention in this episode was like, no, I'm not going to save her dad. It might be better if I let her dad die so that I can be with her. I mean, he's not the greatest dude either because he's a drunk and he's abusive. Really quickly, speaking of drunks, we saw the beginning of Six Pack. He was just got a new job. He's like, oh, I'm going to have one slippery slope. It can't be that bad. Yep. I mean, because the drink's literally called Slippery Slope, and then immediately, like, gets the, like, beer eyes, the alcohol eyes, and the 5 o'clock shadow, and immediately became Six Pack in that moment. I was like, I love that it was kind of a nothing thing of, like, you thought it'd be a little more dramatic. I thought they'd build out the whole thing more, and like I said, that's something that could be played out more present day if they want to, him getting sober and it just being a hot mess of a thing. We'll see if they explore that or not, but then just kind of like just a throwaway line, couple lines of dialogue of how, like, it wasn't like oh man, this is gonna be like, they could have stopped it with, oh my God, I had my first beer, what's one bit of alcohol gonna do? But they played out the bit by being like, yeah, just took that one to send him down the edge. I mean, obviously it's a cartoon, so they're gonna go like 0 to 100 with it. I also love that he was ragging on, like, once again, just showcasing how much of a piece of shit their dad is. He was ragging on their mom, being like, oh, like, I could have been with someone hot, like, what was it? Ali Ringwald or Molly Sheedy. He had switched Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy's names around. To be fair, he was drunk. But I thought it was so interesting. I mean, it's the 80s, so of course you're going to reference, like, The Breakfast Club. I had to look it up because I was like, Ali Sheedy, like, have I seen... I was like, yes. The thing I'm probably most familiar with her from, she played Yang in Psych. So I was like, that's probably the thing I'm most familiar with her from. I've seen references and, like, parodies of The Breakfast Club, but I don't think I've ever actually seen The Breakfast Club. But also, it's like, to be in his defense, it's like both Molly Ringwald and Ali have, like, aged very beautifully. Like, they've always been very beautiful women, you know. So it's just like, I see your point, but it's all, I mean, which still fucked up to say that to your wife, but it's like, yeah, he also hit his wife, so he's like, once again, he's like, there's no like redeeming thing of like, oh my God, it's like, no, their dad was a piece of shit. Maybe he could have redeemed himself, but it's like, oh, he was a piece of shit. So I love that their mom Rebecca gets saved, but dad gets obliterated along with other people, and it's like, oh, it all worked out, and Lisa's happy, being like, oh my God, my mom's alive. Yeah, that's great. They go back in time. They go back to present day. I also love that she's all about there being an open door policy when it comes to the bathroom stuff. Specifically peeing. I don't know if that includes pooping or not. But Kite Man's like, no. I get it. I'm a shy peer. Like, I'm the type of person that's like, I have to run the faucet sometimes if like where the bathroom's positioned and like near like the living room stuff. I'm like, I got to turn on a faucet so I can pee sometimes. I get so I'm a self-conscious peer. Sorry. But nevertheless, they come back, and it turns out, like, what are you talking about? Mom died. It's like, wait, what? I was like, wait, did she get Final Destination? And it turns out, nope, she just abandoned you. Once again, this storyline is so fucked. I was like, because the moment she was like, oh, like, Lisa was like, oh, you can do whatever you want to now. And she had a sinister smile. I was like, is she about to become a big-time villain that you set forth? That whole situation is like, kind of, but we'll get to that in a second. But that's so effed, because she's like, whoa, where's the pictures of me and mom? It's like, yeah, you had no relationship with your mom because Bane thought it'd be more okay to let you know, yeah, he told your brother, like, oh, yeah, your mom died. She certainly didn't abandon you. I'm like, I think that would be better, because it's like, well, you're like, well, there's no controlling that. But it's still sad, because that means timeline-wise, Lisa still had to grow up believing she murdered her mom and dad. Dad's one thing, mom, you'd at least believe, like, hey, at least you had one parent around. It's like, no, the moment she got an opportunity, to be fair, they already made it clear she didn't care about her children. They're like, because like, oh my God, you have an adorable child. And he's like, no, Bane was like, your kids are adorbs. And she's like, eh. So she was really quick she was someone that got stuck in a relationship and stuck with the motherhood role. But that's kind of like, that sucks. She just like bailed and never came back into their lives, apparently. But then we see her locked up in, you can only assume Arkham, but it might be Blackgate for all we know. But yeah, she's locked up, and then some gas comes in, and we see like, oh, the consequences of her being alive. But this turns into that Ouroboros thing of, was your mom always alive? Like, it's that thing of the snake eating its own tail. It's all looped, that you always are meant to go back in time to save your mom's life. Well, she saved Kite Man, but Bane saved her mom. But it was like, it was always meant to happen that way, meaning your mom's always been alive. You've just never been aware of it. So that might be kind of how they're approaching that. It's also interesting, too, because obviously they've showcased time travel. I didn't even think about that, because I was like, right, they utilized time travel last season 4 of Harley Quinn, so to kind of have like this early on, it's going to be interesting to see how the ripple effects of, because that makes the question once again, like, is it just, yeah, your mom was always alive and was going to become this thing, who, like, is she going to become a version of a villain that we already know, or is she just going to become something else entirely? Was she captured and experimented on? Because it looked like that was kind of like an Arkham jumpsuit she was wearing, but I'm not sure. It makes you wonder, did she get, like, when did that happen? Like, has she been there the entire time in Arkham? I mean, why would you go looking for your parents when you believe them to be dead? So you would never think to look for your mom in Arkham and stuff like that, right? So, I don't know. The whole thing's fascinating. Because I actually looked it up, did a quick Google search, because part of me was curious, but part of me didn't want to know. From the quick Googling I did, like I said, I didn't read into it too deeply. I don't think Leonard and Lisa's parents are anything significant in the comics. So that might not be something explored. So this might be just something for the TV show. So I didn't see any precedent for their mom in the comics becoming somebody, but it could be a thing of maybe she's going to become a certain villain or character in this continuity, that maybe a different character becomes that character in the comics, but maybe she becomes, or maybe it's just she's a brand new character, new villain, new threat. Who knows what that's going to turn into, but that's going to be interesting to see. I'm very excited to ultimately see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.